Hi friends, welcome to my channel and welcome to my very first video. My name is Sam from Sam's Creative Kitchen. I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel for quite some time, and I figure being quarantined and having a lot of time on my hands is the perfect opportunity to do so. So this channel is going to focus on helping folks get creative with their cooking, and I have 4 ways of intending to do that. The first is by showing you how to meal prep and batch cook for maximum efficiency. This is especially helpful if you are a busy person, if you don't enjoy cooking every single night, or if you have a large family to feed. The second way is by finding creative ways to utilize leftovers and food scraps. The third is by showing you how to eat healthy on a budget, which absolutely can be done. And the fourth is by showing you ways to reduce your food waste in general and to support local agriculture when you can. So friends, in today's video, I'm going to be batch cooking 6 different items. I will be making 2 breakfast items, 2 lunches, and 2 dinners. I'm trying specifically in this video to focus on pantry and freezer staple items, so items that most households likely already have in their pantry or freezer. And then I'm also trying to focus on items that have a long shelf life, don't go bad super easily, and items that aren't in the long list of ingredients that continue to run out in the local grocery stores. So I've got a husband and 2 twin toddlers, and they really like all of these things. They're tried and true recipes that I've come up with on my own. So I figure if my family likes them, yours probably will too. So let's jump in and start cooking.
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be making is mason jar overnight oats. You're going to need a large glass mixing bowl, a whisk to mix everything together, some type of yogurt. You can use homemade yogurt, you can use store-bought yogurt. I personally like to use the thicker Greek style yogurt. A sweetener, we like maple syrup, but you could also use honey if you prefer. Some oats. These are just old-fashioned rolled oats. You could also use quick cooking oats if you prefer. These are chia seeds here. If you don't like chia seeds, you could also use hemp hearts in their place. Some milk. This is just unsweetened almond milk. You could also use coconut milk or soy milk if you prefer. A nut butter of choice. We like peanut butter in our house, but you could also use almond or cashew butter if you prefer. And some cinnamon. That's just a personal preference. We just like the flavor of cinnamon, so we always add a little bit. Then we're going to go ahead and mix everything together in our glass mixing bowl. I will have exact measurements for this typed out in the description box down below. So what I'm going to do next is just use a measuring cup to scoop some individual portions into little 6-ounce mason jars. You could also use little Tupperware containers if you prefer, anything to just sort of put them into individual portions. And then what I've done is just put lids on each mason jar. I actually just like to reuse these plastic lids from like old peanut butter or mayonnaise jars. And these will keep in the fridge for about 5 to 7 days. The next thing we're going to be making is some rice and bean breakfast burritos. You can make these gluten-free or not, depending on which type of tortilla you use. I'm going to start by chopping up half of an onion and half of a red bell pepper. Next, I'm going to be whisking up about 2 tablespoons of half and half. You could also use heavy cream if you prefer, with about 6 or 7 eggs. Just going to crack each of the eggs in and then whisk it up with a little bit of salt. Next, I'm going to get started on my rice. I've just got some basmati rice cooking up in some bone broth and some spices. I just used chili powder, cumin, salt, and pepper. I'll have the exact recipe linked below. And I've also got a bowl of pre-cooked black beans here that I will add in at the end. Once my rice is finished cooking, I'm going to go ahead and add my beans there. We'll mix it up all together, and then we will let that sit until our scrambled eggs are finished. So for the scrambled eggs, I'm going to start by heating up some butter in my cast iron skillet. I find a cast iron skillet is a great way to cook eggs. Then I will add in some garlic, some onion that I chopped before, and the bell pepper. Let that cook for a little bit. So now I'll go ahead and add in my egg and cream mixture, and we will cook that up until my eggs are just scrambled. Then while my eggs are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and grate up some sharp cheddar cheese. I prefer to grate the cheese myself rather than buying pre-shredded cheese. It is cheaper and it is not filled with weird preservative ingredients. Then for quick and easy assembly of the burritos, I'm going to go ahead and put all of the components into their own little bowls so I can just set up sort of an assembly station. So I've got some cheese, my rice and beans, my scrambled egg mixture, and then I've also got a little bowl of salsa there. And now I will begin assembling my burritos. So there's no exact science to this, no exact measurements. I'm basically just going to spoon some rice and beans, then some eggs, some cheese, and some salsa onto all of my burritos until they are all complete. Okay, and now comes the tricky part, which is wrapping the burritos. So I like to just basically fold in both of the sides and then wrap the tortilla around the rest of the burrito and roll it up really tight. If some ingredients slip out, don't worry about it. As long as you've got most of the components inside of the burrito and not on the counter, you're doing good. Okay, for our next meals, we're going to be batch cooking 2 types of soup. We have a creamy tomato soup and a broccoli and cheddar soup. First step is to preheat our oven to 400 to roast the broccoli. So to roast the broccoli, I just like to toss it with a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of salt, and then we'll bake it in the oven for about 15 or 20 minutes or until it looks kind of crispy and charred. I know roasting the broccoli seems like an unnecessary step, but it really gives the soup a nice flavor. So the next thing I'm going to do is to start prepping and chopping my vegetables. I've got half an onion, about 3 peeled carrots, a couple stalks of celery, and a red bell pepper, which I have already de-seeded here. I also always like to keep a bowl nearby for veggie scraps, just the end pieces and the peels and things like that, so I can use that later on to make bone broth. So I'm going to get started on chopping my vegetables here. The reason I like to batch cook these 2 soups at the same time is because they utilize a lot of the same ingredients. So I'll just get 2 pots going side by side on the stovetop and cook them right at the same time. And here I've separated my vegetables into 2 separate piles. One will be for the tomato soup, one for the broccoli. So as I said, I'm just going to get 2 pots going here at the same time, and we'll just cook these soups side by side. So I've got a little bit of butter in each. I'm just going to add some garlic powder again to each pot. And now I'm going to toss the veggies in as well. Now into the tomato soup, which I've got on the right hand side, I'm going to add a couple generous shakes of dried basil. And into the broccoli soup, I'm going to add a pinch of dried thyme. Then I'll add a generous shake of salt to each one. Next, I've taken an 8-ounce block of cream cheese, cut it in half, and I will add half a block to each pot of soup. You want to mix this up really well so that there aren't any chunks later on. And this is how you want them both to look. You want the cream cheese to be nice and melted in with the vegetables there. And then we are ready for our next step. So once my broccoli is nicely roasted, I'm just going to go ahead and add it into the pot of my broccoli soup. And then I will add in 3 cans of diced tomatoes to my tomato soup. Once the vegetables are thoroughly mixed up, I'm just going to go ahead and pour in 2 cups of each of bone broth into each of these soups. I make my own bone broth from scratch, but you could also use store-bought chicken stock or vegetable stock if you would like. And then I'm just adding in a little scoop of Dijon mustard to the broccoli soup. Once each of the soups has started to boil, I will go ahead and reduce the heat, cover each one, and then let them simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. Once the soups are finished simmering, we're going to go ahead and blend them up with an immersion blender. If you don't have an immersion blender, you could also use a food processor and just transfer the hot soup into the food processor if you would prefer to do it that way. An immersion blender is a little bit easier to use because you can just stick it right in. You don't have to worry about transferring any hot liquid. So next I've got about 2 cups of grated cheese right here, and I'm going to add in about a cup to each one. You can use whatever type of cheese you would like. I had some sharp cheddar on hand that I had previously used for the burritos, so I just used that. Mozzarella would also be really good. Then I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of half and half to each soup. As you can see, I am not particular about measuring. I pretty much just eyeball everything. Then I'm going to mix up each of the soups until the cheese and cream are nice and melted in there. And then you want to just salt and pepper it to taste once you're done. I like to store these in mason jars. You can store them in whatever size you like. I find the smaller jars are really nice for individual portions for lunches, and these heat up really well. Okay, so the next meal we're going to be making is a 3-bean turkey chili. So we're going to start with chopping up a whole onion and a whole bell pepper. Whichever color you have on hand is just fine. Next, I'm going to heat up some olive oil in my cast iron Dutch oven, add some garlic powder, and add in the onions and peppers that I just diced. Let those saute. I'm adding in here 1.5 pounds of organic ground turkey. We're not going to use all of this for the chili. We will actually be using half for the next meal. We're just going to cook it sort of all at once to save time. Next, I'm going to add in some seasoning. I will have the exact sort of ingredients broken out down below in the description box, but I like to add about 3 tablespoons of this and a little bit of chili lime salt as well. So now, as I said, we're going to scoop out half of this turkey mixture, and we will be saving this for the next meal that we'll be making. And then I'm just going to continue assembling my turkey chili right in this same pot. So next I'm going to be adding in 2 cans of diced tomatoes. Then I will fill up each of those cans about halfway with water and add some water to the pot as well. We'll bring that up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and cover. Once it's been simmering for about 15 minutes, we'll go ahead and take the cover off, and then we can add in our beans. I'm using just some pre-cooked beans that I already had, some chickpeas, some black beans, and some kidney beans. You could use either 2 cans of beans or about 3 cups of cooked beans, whatever you like. Then I'm going to stir this up, add some salt and pepper to taste, and it is ready to go. On to our final meal. This is a roasted veggie taco casserole. We are going to start by preheating our oven to 400. Next, we're going to start chopping our vegetables. You can pretty much use any vegetable you like for this. I am using potatoes, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli. I've also made this with bell peppers, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes. Pretty much any kind of vegetable that roasts up nicely is going to work really well in this dish. And once you've got everything chopped up, we're just going to drizzle this with some olive oil, a little bit of sea salt, and then we will roast this in our oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. You want your vegetables to be pretty well cooked, but this casserole is going to go back in the oven, so you don't want them to be like too brown or crispy. So once your vegetables are roasted, you're going to go ahead and transfer them into like an 8x8 casserole dish. Then we are going to take that leftover turkey from earlier and you'll just spoon that over the top. I totally forgot to mention that you could also use ground beef or ground chicken in this recipe as well. Next, we are going to top the meat with some shredded cheese. Again, I'm using a sharp cheddar. Whatever you'd like to use is totally fine. And then I'm going to just spoon some salsa over the top of this as well. I'm going to turn my oven down to 350 and I'm going to pop my casserole into the oven and we'll put that in there for about 15 minutes. And once it's finished baking, it is ready to enjoy. This is really good with some slaw on top or some guacamole, or we have even eaten this as a breakfast casserole with a poached egg on top. It's delicious.